Adams writes to Jefferson and says, one of the great things ever written in a letter. He says, my friend, we must not die until we have explained ourselves to each other. And they did, and they died simultaneously, as you know, on the 4th of July, 1826. But the reconciliation is an amazing thing, and I have to say two things about it in closing. One is that Adams did the heavy lifting. Jefferson is like Muhammad Ali in Zaire, bobbing and weaving and avoiding conflict. Adams was the heavy lifter in this correspondence, and he wrote three or so letters to every one that Jefferson wrote. And secondly, Adams loved Jefferson. So your rainbow metaphor is not so far away. He actually loved Jefferson. Jefferson esteemed John Adams, but Adams had a huge capacity for love, and he was willing to overcome the deep bitterness he felt, and he was right about the way Jefferson had treated him in those difficult years. And so it ends beautifully, and that correspondence is, every time I'm depressed about this country, I read the Jefferson-Adams correspondence and cheer up.
In a letter to his son in 1789, John Adams stated, and I quote, "Public business, my son, must always be done by somebody. It will be done by somebody or other. If wise men decline it, others will not. If honest men refuse it, others will not." End quote. The men behind the legends. John Adams was a fierce and intelligent-minded champion of the independence cause of the United American Colonies. Adams was one of the chief champions of independence in the Continental Congress, going on to lead the fight for freedom, and even nominated George Washington to serve as the commander of the Continental Army. Adams also served as a bright intellect who was an important drafter of the Massachusetts State Constitution in 1779, which remains the oldest active state constitution in the world, and provided for the three branches model that would make its way into the federal constitution. Not only was Adams vital in the national and state affairs, but he was vital in foreign outreach, securing vital funding from the Dutch and assisted in the negotiation of the Treaty of Paris, which ended the American Revolution. Adams also went on to serve his nation as the second president, which he successfully avoided war with the French and entangling the infant nation in European conflicts. Born the 30th day of October in the year 1735 in colonial Massachusetts, John Adams was the eldest of three sons to his parents, John Adams Sr., and Susanna Adams. His father worked as a farmer and a shoemaker. He also served as a deacon and an official in the local colonial government. His eldest son, John Adams, received formal education, graduating from Harvard College in 1755 and began his law career in 1758. Becoming one of Boston's most respected practitioners of law. After launching his professional career, John Adams got married to then Abigail Smith in 1764, who mothered the sixth President of the United States, John Quincy Adams. Abigail Adams went on not to only be John Adams' wife, or John Quincy Adams' mother, but she, in her own intellectual right, was John Adams' most trusted confidant, regularly corresponding with John Adams and influencing his thought on important topics. Starting in the 1760s, John Adams started becoming more concerned about British tyranny and started challenging royal authority over colonial America, viewing British taxes and tariffs as a tool of oppressive nature. Adams no longer believed that the British government had the interest of the colonists in mind. For instance, Adams criticized the Stamp Act of 1765 and spoke out against the Townshend Acts of 1767. Then, in 1774, Adams attended the First Continental Congress, where he served as a delegate from Massachusetts. Then, in 1775, as a delegate to the Second Continental Congress, Adams presented arguments in support of independence, and even went on, as previously stated, to nominate George Washington to be the commander of the Continental Army. John Adams also served his nation as an intellectual behind prominent documents, such as the Massachusetts State Constitution. In 1779, Adams drafted the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which remains the world's oldest functioning written state constitution. From the ideas established in this important document, the three branches government model made its way into the federal constitution at the Constitutional Convention of 1787. In 1915, the American Historical Association president stated that, I quote, "If I were called upon to select a single fact or enterprise which more nearly than any other single thing embraced the significance of the American Revolution, I should choose the formation of the Massachusetts Constitution." End quote. This is a testimony to John Adams' legacy in Massachusetts and in the United States as a whole. Not only was John Adams a champion of independence at home and an intellectual architect of that self-governing experiment, but he was also a backbone behind securing vital Dutch funding for the American Revolution and in securing necessary peace terms and the Treaty of Paris, ending the American Revolution. In 1778, John Adams was sent to Paris, for example, in France, where he secured vital aid for the revolution. Then in 1783, John Adams worked with John Jay and Benjamin Franklin to negotiate that famous Treaty of Paris. John Adams truly was a man driven by intellectual fortitude, spirited passions, and a trusted friend in his wife, Abigail Adams. While John Adams was an indispensable fighter for the revolutionary cause, his time as president was rocked by divisive tactics. As one of the most infamous aspects of his presidency, the passage and enforcement of the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798 were four controversial laws granting the president the power to deport non-citizens and criminalize scandalous and malicious writings against the government, resulting in the arrest and imprisonment of those holding opposite views of his administration. The acts sparked massive constitutional crises, which were responded to by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison in the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, arguing that the federal government had aggressively overstepped their powers.